This is Dim Simple Media, the first Los Angeles opposition YouTube channel, reporting from the basement. Why am I in the basement? Because all the normal, civilized, self-sufficient people are going to be hiding in their basements from the red terror that democratic socialists like Zohran Mamdani will unleash on America. This is a warning. This is a serious warning to Americans. What is happening in New York is going to be happening everywhere in the United States if people don't wake up. Zohran Mamdani is honest about what he wants to do. He's not just a Democrat, he's a democratic socialist, basically a communist. He wants rent control, he wants $30 per hour minimum wage, he wants to expropriate private property, he wants to release criminals from prisons with the public safety reform and not arrest criminals for property crimes or violent crimes. He wants a complete change of capitalist system to a socialist, corrupt socialist system that never worked in any of the countries where it was imposed by red terror. Zohran Mamdani is the beginning of the red terror in the United States. I grew up in the Soviet Union. I know what it's like to live under socialist tyranny. Now I live in California under socialist tyranny, and it's gonna only get worse if people don't wake up. They will be taking away your private property. The government will be going after you in every imaginable way if you're a self-sufficient person. You will not have any freedoms. They're gonna build a socialist, communist, government-run utopia, which always ended up failing after blood of millions of people was spilled. Please learn Russian history. Learn how the revolution happened in 1917, over 100 years ago. Yes, it's a different culture, it's a different continent, it's a different time. It's been over 100 years, but they're repeating the same exact scenario. Eat the rich, take the money from the rich and give it to the poor. Let's just take away private property. Rent control is stealing private property from the landowners, from the property owners. Just take that example. They're not going to allow themselves to be robbed. They're just going to pack up and leave. All the businesses, they're going to leave New York. New York is already a crime-infested shithole, and he wants public safety reform where they're going to persecute police instead of prosecuting the criminals. I mean, it's going to be a nightmare. Where I grew up, Soviet Union fell apart because no one was interested in doing anything because they were not allowed to run a business. They didn't have private property. They were basically all under the tyranny of the socialist government. People didn't own anything. We didn't own apartments. Yes, there was a free health care, but the health care sucked because those doctors had no motivation to treat people. There was free housing, what Mamdani wants, but that free housing was in degrading conditions, and not everyone even was eligible. 10 people would live in the same room because there was shortage of housing, because obviously no one would want to build new housing. You can only rob this much. The communists, they flooded the country with blood before they came to power. This is what democratic socialists will do. You don't understand how dangerous they are. You got to understand. They start by saying, eat the rich. Oh, let's tax the billionaires. Billionaires will pay for everything. they treat the property owners as enemies, and yet at the same time they want to rob them and use their wealth and their money to spread it to the parasites who don't want to work. And this is how he won. This talking about populism, Mr. Mamdani pretty much promised all these people who want to live at other people's expense that he will force property owners and business owners to pay up, that he will rob them in favor of parasites, of those professional parasites that voted for him. But listen, this is not going to be so simple. Read the history. Read the Russian history. There was a civil war, a major civil war that lasted for 4 years. People who owned things, people who were self-sufficient, normal, civilized people, they resisted, including the farmers. The farmers resisted. The people who were running businesses, they resisted. There was a major civil war. There will be resistance to this. This is not going to end up just like a peaceful expropriation of property. It's not going to be non-violent, because the majority of the people are not professional parasites. They're earning incomes and they don't want to be taxed into extinction. They don't want to be taxed into extinction. The businesses want to survive. They're not going to put up with this. You people need to read the history of Russia and Soviet Union. And guess what? Yes, democratic socialists won in Soviet Union, and they lasted for almost 70 years. First of all, they killed millions of people when they needed to come to power. They sacrificed tens of millions of people, killing them, calling them bourgeois, bourgeois exploiters, that they're exploiting people, accusing them of exploiting people, and then they killed them. They wanted to destroy them as a class completely. If someone grew up in a family of a business owner, they were considered to be the enemy of the people. There was also no freedom of speech. There was censorship. There was police state, socialist police state. They're worried about Trump becoming so-called dictator, but they were the ones who were true totalitarian dictators. Democratic socialists, communists, they're the dictators. They created a totalitarian government in all the socialist countries, including Russia and Ukraine, Soviet Union. And at the end of the day, it all fell apart, even though they had full control over the society. They had all the levers of government control. There was no private property anymore, but people could no longer handle it. It was just falling apart, collapsing on itself. Socialist societies do not work. Even if democratic socialists like Mamdani come to power, it's not going to work. It cannot work. The only system that works is capitalist, merit-based system. Read the history, learn from history. Don't make the same mistake that people in Russia made 100 years ago, that people in China made when there was Cultural Revolution. Then Eastern Europe, so many countries, Vietnam, Nicaragua, Venezuela, they all failed. They all failed. You're gonna fail, Mamdani. But you probably don't even understand that you're playing with fire. This is not gonna end well. You need to learn from history. You see, my hat reads, "Earn my compassion." What does this mean? Socialists, liberals, Democrats, whatever you call them, communists, they appeal to people's sense of empathy and compassion for people who are in reality defective in many different ways. Why are they defective? Because they're not self-sufficient. Putting aside, disabled people, disabled from childhood, sick people, elderly people, putting that aside, the rest of them are defective in many different ways because they're not self-sufficient. So they want to live at other people's expense. And democratic socialists represent those people. They represent people who want to live at other people's expense. And also, they represent the educated people who are self-sufficient, but they got the wrong education in all these liberal universities. That's what's wrong with our education system. So basically, we have to go to the basics. We have to go to the basics. They're pushing people's compassion buttons. They're pushing people's compassion buttons. What does this mean? What is the compassion button? People are raised to feel empathy indiscriminately for other people who are worse off without screening them. In a merit-based society, you don't feel compassion for someone who doesn't want to work, for someone who is so defective that they're engaged in drug use, drug trade, all kinds of crime, parasitic behavior, welfare addiction, etc. You don't feel compassionate to them because their behavior doesn't earn them any compassion. They have no redeeming value. They're not contributing anything. They're not being helpful. And very often they cause damage, a lot of damage. They commit crime. They are wasting public resources without giving anything back. They're not grateful. They're aggressive. They're violent. They're not civilized. They're ghetto. And yet, democratic socialists base their appeal on people's compassion for these defective groups of people. This is going down to the roots now. We got to go down to the roots of this. In a normal merit-based society, you only want to share with people that you actually like, with people that are sympathetic, nice, civilized people. You want to share with people that can reciprocate, that will appreciate what you're giving them. But in our society, in our decaying society, and this is why it's decaying, this is why it's degenerate, this is why it's falling apart. In our society, our moral values dictate us to be compassionate indiscriminately to everyone, including those defective groups of people that have no redeeming value, that are violent, that they cause harm, that they are parasites, professional parasites, etc. And this is the problem with those educated voters that helped Mamdani come to power in New York, the first communist come to power in New York. He was using people's anger against high rents and this feeling that it's okay to rob someone who's better off than you. If you're defective, if you can't make enough money to be able to afford living in the apartment or a house that you want to live in, then it's much easier to blame someone who is better off, who is rich, and vote for someone who promises to rob them in your favor, than to become self-sufficient yourself. This is the issue here. It's much harder to become self-sufficient. You have to make an effort. It's much easier to elect some people, populists, communists like Mamdani, to force successful people to sponsor you so you wouldn't need to do anything. Mamdani promised that he will rob the property owners, the business owners, the rich people, in reality everyone who is self-sufficient and who has any income, in favor of those professional parasites that voted for him. And educated elites, they have this compassion button that is very easy to push. They feel like they're willing to sacrifice themselves and their own income, their own well-being for the sake of the defective groups. This is how sick they are. They don't think about their own well-being either. Even though they're educated, they got good education, they're intelligent people, they don't understand how merit-based system is supposed to work. And they have this perverted notion of indiscriminate compassion. Compassion is wonderful, it's great, it's amazing. This is what makes a human being a human, like a real human, when and only when it's applied to someone who deserves it, who earns it. Not to everyone, not to defective parasites, but only to people who earned it. Nice people, civilized people, self-sufficient people, people who you like, sympathetic people. Not ugly, violent parasites. That's the difference. So this is how people, populists, communists like Mamdani appeal to educated elites. Because they're using their compassion button. They're pushing their compassion button. And because moral values that we were raised with dictate us, even if we're well off, to share with professional parasites, even if they don't deserve this. Mark my word, with leaders like Mamdani in New York, where all the self-sufficient people, normal, civilized people, successful people, will end up hiding in moldy basements like this from the red terror, that democratic socialists will unleash on this country. Here's a funny question. If someone lives in a moldy basement like this, or some dilapidated apartment in New York in degrading conditions, what reasons do they have not to vote for populist communists like Mamdani? They have nothing to lose. They have everything to gain. Mamdani promised that he will rob successful people, property owners, of their wealth, their income, in favor of people who are suffering poverty and a lack of income for whatever reason. So, why should they not vote for someone who promised to relieve their burdens and rob their landowner by telling the landlord that he cannot raise your rent, and maybe he has to reduce your rent? It seems like a simple, no-brainer. Mamdani will tell my landlord that landlord cannot raise my rent anymore, and also maybe he can put even eviction moratorium, like they did in LA, here in LA, when under fake pretext of immigration raids, they established another robbery scheme, expropriation of private property scheme, with the new eviction moratorium for undocumented migrants due to the raids, after robbing landowners, property owners for several years with the COVID pretext when they had eviction moratorium. So you think of it, these people only are pretty nearsighted. Yes, let's say they live in poverty, or they're trying to work hard, but the rents are so high and the prices are so high that they just can't keep up. They can't afford anything, and they don't know what to do. So if someone comes along, someone like scam artist like Mamdani comes along and says, hey, don't worry. If you give me the levers of power, if you give me the leverage, if you elect me, I'm going to rob all these business owners, your landlord. I'm going to force them to lower your rent. I'm going to implement forcibly rent control, and then you're going to have a nice life. You're going to be paying less, and I'm going to open up government-run grocery stores at taxpayers' expense, of course, but why would you care if you're not paying taxes? If you're not paying taxes, you don't care that somebody else will pay for you, right? So you're going to go to government grocery store with very low prices and get cheap groceries, and then you're going to have your apartment for free almost, or with very low rent. You're going to have free public transportation at taxpayers' expense too, but you don't care about that, right? Because, you don't look too far ahead. You just, hey, you know what? They're doing it for me. I'm going to benefit. I don't care how it's going to impact successful people, They're better off than me, so why should I care about them? Screw them, fuck them. They're exploiting, those employers. They're exploiting their employees. The landlords are sharks. They're taking advantage of us, the tenants. We should have rights, no responsibilities, and also the employers, they should pay us a lot more, and they should make no profit whatsoever, but they're there to just pay us high minimum wage and high salary. So from my position as a person who lives in poverty and paying right now high prices and high rents, sure, I want Mamdani to run the government and persecute all these institutions that are causing my pain, so to speak, which is pretty much the capitalism, is institution of merit-based capitalist society. So if he dismantles the institution of merit-based capitalist society, I'm gonna prosper. I'm gonna pay very low rents. I'm gonna go to government run grocery store and buy very cheap groceries. I'm going to have guaranteed employment because my employer will not be able to fire me. Plus, I'm going to have a highest imaginable minimum wage. And this is just going to be a paradise. So how can I not vote for this amazing guy, this Messiah who came to us from Uganda, out of all countries, with this wonderful socialist message? If you really enjoyed this video, let's keep it between ourselves. Don't worry about liking it, subscribing for it, sharing with anybody. I don't care. I actually don't want you to spill the beans.